What else are you hearing from the palace tonight about Princess Catherine's condition? Not to mention the timing of this announcement.
The royal gala was meant to be a night of polished smiles, glittering jewels, and carefully rehearsed unity. But within minutes, the room changed. Catherine saw Camilla wearing Diana's rare tiara, and the Princess of Wales did not look away. She stopped mid-step, turned toward the Queen Consort, and halted the entire evening with one controlled, devastating gesture. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Silence hit first, then came the shock. Catherine did not raise her voice, did not rush forward, did not let anger break across her face. She simply froze, and that stillness was enough to make the people around her understand that something had gone terribly wrong. A royal gala, a formal palace event where the family appears together to show strength and unity, had suddenly become the stage for a wound no speech could cover. The tiara was not just a sparkling ornament. It was a royal headpiece passed through family history, and in this moment, it carried the memory of Diana, the pain of William, and the shadow that still followed Harry from across the distance. William saw Catherine stop, and the prince's expression changed before anyone could explain why. He knew that piece. He knew what it meant. He had spent years learning how to stand inside a monarchy that once failed his mother, and now her memory was shining above Camilla's face, as if the past could be worn without consequence. Catherine felt the same truth settle in her chest. First came shock. Then came something colder. Not rage, not panic. A quiet anger that grew because Diana's name was not decoration, and her story was not a costume for palace unity. Camilla tried to keep moving. She lifted her chin, held her smile, and acted as though the evening could still be saved by willpower alone. But her hand betrayed her. For one brief second, the Queen Consort touched the tiara, almost as if checking whether it was still there, almost as if she already knew it had become dangerous. That small gesture said more than a confession. She understood the room had noticed. She understood Catherine had noticed. And she understood that William had seen the same thing. Charles felt the silence spread before the guests fully understood it. The king turned toward an aide and gave a low instruction to pause the formal announcement, the planned public statement that was supposed to mark the gala's official purpose. He did not explain. He did not need to. The monarch could see Catherine moving now, one careful step closer to Camilla, while William remained beside her like a wall of controlled grief. The aide stepped back, the program stopped, and every polished smile in the room began to crack. Catherine came closer, calm enough to frighten them all. She did not look defeated. She looked decided. Camilla held her ground, but the Queen Consort's face tightened as the distance between them vanished. Charles watched the moment slip beyond protocol. William watched his wife carry the burden his heart could barely hold. And as the music faded behind them, the real battle was no longer about a tiara, it was about who had the right to carry Diana's memory. Before one word was spoken, 4 people understood that the gala had become something far more dangerous than a public embarrassment. Catherine stood wounded, but steady. William looked torn between duty and memory. Camilla held her position with visible strain. Charles carried the impossible weight of a king who knew that one jewel had reopened every scar the palace had tried to bury. Catherine felt the room closing in, yet she did not step back. She had entered the evening as the Princess of Wales, a title given to the wife of the future king. But in that moment, it meant more than rank. It meant standing beside William, sharing the weight of Diana's memory, and protecting a legacy that still lived inside the family's deepest wound. Catherine was not Diana's daughter by blood, but she had become the woman closest to the son who carried that pain every day. William stared at the tiara as if time had folded in on itself. The prince had spent years learning how to smile through questions about his mother, how to serve a crown that had once made her lonely, and how to keep grief locked behind duty. But this was different. Diana's rare tiara was not a simple jewel to him. It was a piece tied to a woman the world loved, a mother he lost too young, and a story the palace had never fully escaped. Camilla knew the air had changed. The Queen Consort could feel it in the silence, in the way Catherine's face hardened, in the way William stopped looking like a senior royal and started looking like a son. What she had chosen as elegance now looked like provocation. What she may have believed was continuity now looked like intrusion. Her shoulders stayed firm, but her eyes moved too quickly, searching for rescue that did not come. Charles leaned toward William and quietly asked him to remain calm. The king's voice was low, careful, almost pleading, because he understood the danger of one wrong word. A monarch is the reigning head of the royal family and the state, but even that role could not erase a son's pain. William did not answer. He only looked at his father, and that look carried years of disappointment, loyalty, and grief in one brutal silence. Sophie noticed Catherine's breathing change before anyone else did. The trusted confidant moved closer, not to interrupt, not to speak over her, but to stand near enough that Catherine knew she was not alone. Sophie understood the danger of the moment, because family wounds inside the monarchy never stayed private for long. One tremor could become a national storm. One jewel could become a verdict. Camilla finally turned toward Catherine and asked, in a low voice, whether they should continue the evening. The Queen Consort tried to make it sound practical, almost gentle, but the question landed like pressure. Catherine looked at her, then at William, and then back again. Her answer was quiet, but it cut through every polished excuse in the room. No, they could not continue as if nothing had happened. That refusal changed everything. Catherine was not asking for attention. She was refusing a performance. William stood beside her, steadier now because she had spoken the truth he could barely say. Charles looked from his wife to his son and understood that the gala had already slipped beyond control. But the silence in that room had not begun that night. It had been building for weeks, waiting for one reckless choice to ignite it. The true beginning was not the gala. It was a private jewelry fitting 3 weeks earlier, when Camilla stood before a locked velvet case and chose the one piece everyone believed would remain untouched. Catherine was not there, but her absence made the decision sharper. By the time the tiara left the vault, the point of no return had already arrived. Camilla had entered that private fitting expecting control. The royal jewelry vault, a secure palace collection where historic family jewels are stored and prepared for major events, was supposed to offer choices, not danger. Charles had already approved a broad jewelry selection for the gala, meaning the Queen Consort could choose from several pieces considered suitable for public ceremony. But he had not expected her to reach for Diana's rare tiara. He had not imagined that one choice would turn a celebration into a reckoning. An aide watched Camilla's hand move toward the case and felt the danger before the words were spoken. The aide warned her carefully, saying the tiara carried emotional weight because it was tied to Diana, William, and the pain still living inside the family. Camilla listened, but she did not step away. The Queen Consort believed the jewel would show continuity, a message that the monarchy could absorb the past and keep moving. But the aide knew some memories could not be absorbed. Some memories fought back. Sophie learned the truth through a private documented account from the same aide 2 days later. The trusted confidant read the note once, then again, and understood immediately why this mattered. It was not about sparkle. It was about timing, grief, and the silent rules families create when official rules are not enough. Sophie knew Catherine would not see the tiara as an innocent choice. She would see it as a line crossed in front of the one man who had carried Diana's loss since boyhood. Catherine felt the sadness land before anger could reach her. When Sophie told her about the fitting in a private conversation, she did not explode. She went quiet. That quietness hurt more because the princess understood what a public argument would do before the gala even began. If she challenged Camilla too early, the palace would call it tension. If she stayed silent, William might have to face the pain alone. So Catherine chose restraint, hoping dignity could survive what protocol had failed to protect. William became unsettled the moment Catherine mentioned the tiara. The prince asked whether Charles truly knew, and the question carried more than curiosity. It carried a son's fear that his mother's memory had once again been placed beneath royal convenience. Catherine could not give him certainty. She could only tell him what Sophie had learned and what the aide had warned. William looked away, and in that pause, she knew he was already back in the old ache. Charles believed he had managed the gala before it even began. The king trusted that approved jewels, careful seating, and polished order would hold the night together. But monarchy is not held together by schedules alone. It is held together by meaning. Camilla believed the tiara would help her stand as Queen Consort with confidence. Instead, the piece became a painful reminder that history does not bow just because the crown asks it to. Catherine decided to attend anyway. She would not arrive looking wounded. She would not give the palace a crisis before the first greeting. She would stand beside William, face Camilla, and trust that dignity would be enough. But that hope lasted only until the moment Camilla entered the room, wearing the very symbol Catherine had prayed would remain unseen. No shouting was needed. No public accusation had to be made. Catherine simply stepped toward Camilla, and the space between them became the most dangerous place in the room. Guests stopped speaking. William moved closer. Charles looked suddenly older. The Queen Consort lifted her chin, but the confidence she tried to show could not hide the fear in her eyes. Catherine looked straight at Camilla and asked one question that cut through every polished excuse. Why this tiara? Why tonight? Her voice stayed low, but the room felt the force behind it. The Princess of Wales was not speaking as someone hungry for drama. She was speaking as the woman standing beside William, the son of Diana, in front of a jewel that carried too much grief to be treated like decoration. Camilla answered with control, but not comfort. The Queen Consort said the piece belonged to the crown, the royal collection of jewels, titles, and symbols held for the monarchy rather than one private person. That explanation might have worked on paper. It might have worked in a palace briefing, but Catherine did not let it pass. She told her that not everything owned by the crown was free from pain, and not every historic piece could be worn without reopening a wound. William stood beside Catherine, fighting to stay still. The prince heard his mother's memory being folded into protocol, and every word seemed to tighten something inside him. He had spent his life learning the language of duty. He knew when to speak, when to wait, when to swallow hurt for the sake of the institution. But this was different. Diana's memory was not a rule book. It was his childhood. It was loss. It was the part of him no crown could command. Charles moved in quickly, hoping one careful sentence might save the room from collapse. The king tried to soften the moment, telling them the evening could still continue if everyone remained calm. But his voice did not carry the command it should have carried. He knew the emotional truth was not on Camilla's side. He could see it in William's face. He could hear it in Catherine's restraint. And he knew that if he forced the gala forward, he would not be protecting the monarchy. He would be humiliating his son. Camilla did not break, but her body betrayed her. Her hand rose toward the tiara, then stopped. A small tremble passed through her fingers, quick enough to miss, but not quick enough for Catherine to ignore. The Queen Consort had tried to stand inside royal authority, yet for one sharp second, she looked less like a woman defending a jewel, and more like a woman realizing she had misjudged the cost. Catherine refused to move on. She told Charles the gala could not continue until the matter was addressed privately. The palace program, the planned order of speeches, greetings, and ceremonial moments suddenly meant nothing beside the pain now sitting at the center of the room. William stayed beside her, silent but firm. Camilla looked from Catherine to the king, waiting for him to restore control. But control had already slipped away. Charles finally understood that delay was no longer possible. The monarch turned toward the nearest aide and ordered the doors to the side chamber opened. The side chamber, a smaller private room used for sensitive royal conversations away from guests, became the only place left for a confrontation too dangerous to continue in public. Catherine walked forward first. William followed. Camilla held her chin high, but her silence had changed. The crowd remained behind, but the consequence followed them in. Charles entered last, carrying the terrible knowledge that the gala had become a test of loyalty, memory, and power. Behind those closed doors, the question changed from what Camilla had worn to who still had the power to decide what Diana's memory meant. Inside the side chamber, the glamour vanished. There were no smiles left, no music, no ceremonial distance. Charles stood between his wife, his son, and the woman who had just stopped the monarchy's most carefully arranged evening. Then he did something no one expected. He stopped defending the schedule and began studying the damage written across William's face. Charles knew the danger had changed shape. This was no longer about saving an event. It was about saving trust inside a family, already carrying too many old wounds. The ceremonial sequence, the planned order of speeches, greetings, and formal moments at a royal event, had been prepared to show control. But control meant nothing if the people standing at the heart of the monarchy looked emotionally broken in front of their own guests. William spoke before the king could soften the room again. The prince told his father that Diana's name could not be treated as decoration while her sons were standing nearby. His voice stayed low, but every word carried a lifetime of restraint. He was not asking for revenge. He was asking for respect. Catherine stood beside him, still controlled, still steady, but her silence made one thing clear. She would not apologize for halting the evening. Camilla felt the walls closing in. The Queen Consort insisted she had worn the tiara as a symbol of her place, not as an insult to Diana or her sons. She reminded Charles that she had acted within her role, and that the jewel belonged to the crown. But the crown, meaning the monarchy's official authority and historic possessions, could not protect her from the human meaning of what she had done. A piece could be legal to wear and still be cruel to show. Sophie stepped forward carefully. The trusted confidant did not raise her voice, but she gave Charles the truth no aide wanted to say. She reminded him that symbols can heal a family when they are handled with care, or humiliate it when they are used without feeling. Catherine looked at Sophie and understood she was not standing alone. William heard the same words and finally breathed as if someone had named the wound properly. Charles looked down at the briefing paper in his hand. The king had carried it into the side chamber like a shield, a page of planned lines and official order. Then he set it down. That small act changed the room. It meant the schedule had lost. It meant the pain had won. He told them the gala would not continue in its original form until the tiara issue was resolved. Camilla stared at him, stunned by the shift. The Queen Consort had expected Charles to protect the evening, perhaps even protect her. Instead, he looked at William, then Catherine, and understood that forcing them back into the room without action would make the monarchy look cold, blind, and careless. The king was not choosing against his wife. He was choosing to stop the wound from becoming a public disaster. Catherine remained calm, but the power in her calmness filled the chamber. She had not shouted. She had not accused for attention. She had simply refused to let Diana's memory be used as a polished ornament for royal unity. William stood beside her, and the prince's silence now felt less like pain and more like agreement. Charles saw that, and the decision became unavoidable. Charles finally turned to Camilla and asked her to remove the tiara before returning to the gala. The words landed softly, but they struck like a royal sentence. Camilla did not answer at once. Her face tightened, her pride fighting her fear, while Catherine looked away and William lowered his eyes. But removing the tiara did not remove the wound, it only made the fallout impossible to hide. When Camilla returned, the room noticed immediately. The tiara was gone. Not announced, not explained, simply absent. And sometimes absence is louder than scandal. Catherine stood beside William with a face of quiet resolve, while Charles carried the burden of a decision that protected Diana's memory but left his wife publicly diminished before the entire royal circle. Camilla walked back into the gala with her head held high, but everyone saw what was missing. The Queen Consort no longer wore Diana's rare tiara, and the change struck the room harder than any speech could have done. A tiara is a jeweled headpiece worn for grand royal occasions, but this one had become something far heavier than ceremony. It had become proof that Catherine's objection had been heard, that William's pain had mattered, and that Charles had chosen family feeling over polished tradition. Catherine felt no victory. She stood beside William and carried only sadness, because the moment had exposed how thin royal unity could be when old wounds were touched. The Princess of Wales had not wanted Camilla humiliated. She had wanted Diana's memory protected. But the room did not see the difference at first. The guests saw absence, tension, and a Queen Consort returning without the very jewel that had made her entrance impossible to ignore. William leaned closer to Catherine and thanked her quietly. The prince's voice carried gratitude, but also pain, because he knew what it had cost her to stand firm. He had watched his mother's memory dragged once again into palace politics, and he had watched his wife refuse to let that memory be softened into decoration. Catherine heard the ache beneath his words. She did not answer quickly. She only stayed near him, steady enough for both of them. Camilla sat apart for several minutes, and the distance around her felt cruel. The Queen Consort could hear the whispers even when no one dared speak loudly. She had entered the night believing the tiara would strengthen her place. Now its removal made her look corrected in front of the same circle she had hoped to impress. Her pride remained, but humiliation pressed against it. Every glance felt like judgment. Every pause felt like blame. Charles resumed the gala, but not as planned. The king ordered the evening shortened and cut the formal tribute that had been prepared earlier. A tribute meaning a public moment of praise or remembrance during a ceremony. He understood that continuing with speeches about unity would sound hollow after what everyone had witnessed. The monarch had saved the room from open confrontation, but he had not saved it from truth. The celebration now carried the weight of damage control. Sophie watched Camilla from across the room and understood the loss was not only public. The trusted confidant could see that the Queen Consort had lost more than an ornament. She had lost certainty. She had lost the easy protection of protocol. Sophie also watched Catherine and knew the princess had not acted from cruelty. She had acted because some symbols become too painful when placed on the wrong head at the wrong time. William finally stepped away from the room. The prince did not storm out, but the movement was enough for Catherine to notice. She followed him because she knew his silence too well. Charles saw them leave and looked down for a moment, as if the burden of the night had finally become personal. Camilla remained seated, surrounded by attention yet strangely alone. The corridor beyond the gala became the only place where grief could breathe. Catherine caught up with William before he could bury the pain again. He stopped, but did not speak. She stood beside him, close enough to remind him that he did not have to carry Diana's memory by himself. Away from the chandeliers and polished faces, William and Catherine finally said what the palace had spent decades avoiding. In the corridor, the noise of the gala became distant, almost unreal. William stood with one hand against the wall, fighting the memories that had followed him since childhood. Catherine did not rush him. She simply stayed beside him. For once, there were no aides, no advisors, no royal phrases carefully placed between pain and truth. William finally spoke, and the words came out heavier than anger. He told Catherine that seeing the tiara on Camilla felt like watching Diana's memory being rewritten in real time. Not honored, not protected, rewritten. The prince had carried his mother's loss through every public smile, every royal duty, every carefully managed anniversary. But tonight had forced that private pain into a room full of people pretending not to see it. Catherine listened without interrupting. She knew this mattered, because Diana was not only a former Princess of Wales, a title given to the wife of the heir to the throne. She was William's mother, the woman whose absence shaped his childhood and whose memory still shaped public feeling toward the monarchy. Catherine also knew the tiara mattered, because symbols inside royal life are never just objects. They tell people who is respected, who is replaced, and who is expected to stay silent. William looked away and admitted what hurt him most. He wondered whether he should have spoken first. He wondered whether Catherine had carried a risk that should have belonged to him. The prince's guilt was quiet, but it cut deep. He had stood frozen between duty and grief, while she had stepped forward and done what the palace feared most. She had made the pain visible. Catherine reached for him with calm strength. She told William that silence would have felt like betrayal, and she could not let him stand beside that memory alone. The princess did not say it with pride. She said it with sadness, because she understood the cost. If she stayed quiet, Diana's legacy would be used for ceremony. If she spoke, the monarchy would fracture in public. Either way, someone would bleed. William took Catherine's hand, and that small gesture said what no speech could. He was not thanking her as a royal. He was thanking her as a son, as a husband, as a man who had spent too long carrying pain behind perfect manners. Catherine held his hand firmly, reminding him that protecting Diana's dignity was not only his burden, it was theirs now. Charles appeared at the corridor entrance and stopped before speaking. The king saw his son and daughter-in-law standing together, not as performers of duty, but as two people facing a wound the palace had avoided for decades. He did not interrupt. He did not command. He simply watched, and the silence seemed to humble him. The monarch understood then that power could pause a gala, but love had stopped it. William turned back toward the room with a different kind of strength. The prince was still hurt, but he was no longer alone inside that hurt. Catherine stood beside him, steady and unshaken. Charles remained at the entrance, knowing that something had shifted beyond his control. When William returned to the gala, he did not return as a wounded son hiding his pain. He returned beside Catherine as a future king who had chosen where he stood. By morning, the private wound had become a public earthquake, and the world would judge every face in that room. The next morning, Britain did not wake up to a quiet palace correction. It woke up to a single image that told the whole story. Catherine standing still, Camilla bareheaded, William pale beside them, and Charles looking trapped between love and duty. The monarchy had survived wars, scandals, and betrayals, but this front page made one question impossible to avoid. Catherine saw the headline before breakfast, and the weight of it settled over her at once. The London Herald had placed the image across its front page, with 6 words that struck like a bell. Diana's shadow stops the gala. A front page is the main cover of a newspaper, where editors place the story they believe will define the day. This one did not define only the day. It defined the wound the palace had tried to hide. William read it beside Catherine and said nothing for a long moment. The prince looked at the image of Camilla without the tiara, then at the image of his wife standing firm beside him. He knew the public would understand the symbol faster than the palace ever had. Diana's memory did not belong only inside royal walls. It lived in people who remembered her pain, her warmth, and the way she had been loved beyond ceremony. Camilla felt the judgment before anyone spoke to her directly. The Queen Consort watched broadcasters replay the same image again and again, framing the tiara removal as a public rebuke rather than a private correction. She had believed the night could be controlled once the jewel was taken off. Instead, the absence became the story. Her silence became the story. Catherine's stillness became the story. Charles ordered a brief palace statement before the pressure grew stronger. The king approved the words carefully, confirming that the gala program had been adjusted out of respect for family sensitivities. A palace statement is an official message released to explain or calm a royal matter. But this one could not truly calm anything. It admitted enough to confirm the tension, yet not enough to heal the damage. The monarch knew every sentence would be studied. Crowds gathered outside Kensington Palace with white roses and handwritten cards praising Catherine's decision. Kensington Palace, a royal residence closely linked with William and his family, became the place where public feeling turned personal. People did not gather there for gossip alone. They came because they felt Catherine had defended something tender. One card read simply, "Thank you for remembering her." William heard about the message and looked away, moved more than he wanted to show. Catherine felt overwhelmed by the reaction. She had not halted the gala to become a symbol, yet by morning her private stand had become a national one. The princess understood the danger in that. Public praise could comfort, but it could also deepen the split inside the family. Still, she could not deny what the public had seen. They had seen a woman refuse to let Diana's memory be polished into royal convenience. One royal commentator broke the mood on live television with a line that spread quickly. Last night was not about jewels. It was about memory, respect, and the future queen drawing a line. The words struck Camilla hard, because they named Catherine as the moral center of the story. They struck Charles harder, because they suggested the palace had followed only after his daughter-in-law acted first. The public clearly sided with Catherine, and the palace had no choice but to accept it. Camilla remained isolated, Charles remained careful, and William remained quietly grateful beside the woman who had carried his pain into the light. Formal hierarchy had lost its power for one brutal day. Emotional truth had won, and when the noise finally settled, only one verdict remained, not from newspapers, but from the heart of the monarchy itself. In the end, the night was not remembered for the gala, the guest list, or the speeches that never happened. It was remembered for a pause. Catherine stopped. Camilla stood exposed. William faced the ache of his mother's memory, and Charles learned that a crown can command ceremony, but it cannot command love. That was the verdict no palace statement could soften. Catherine's action became the defining moment because she chose emotional truth over royal performance. The Princess of Wales had not raised her voice, had not chased applause, and had not tried to destroy Camilla in front of the room. She had simply refused to let Diana's memory become part of a polished show. That mattered, because royal life depends on symbols, and when a symbol is used carelessly, it can wound more deeply than words. William found a measure of peace in that truth. The prince had watched Catherine defend his mother's dignity without turning the moment into revenge. Diana's memory, for him, had always carried love and pain together. It was not only history, it was childhood, grief, and the empty space no ceremony could fill. So when Catherine stood firm, he did not see rebellion. He saw protection. He saw someone finally guarding the part of him the palace had too often asked him to hide. Camilla accepted the boundary in private, even if pride made acceptance painful. The Queen Consort understood that wearing the tiara had crossed a line the family was not ready to forgive. A tiara is a jeweled headpiece worn for major royal occasions. But this one had become more than a royal object. It had become a test of memory. She had believed the crown could carry the piece forward. Instead, the piece carried the past back into the room. Charles recognized the lesson later, when the noise had faded, and the formal words no longer mattered. The king understood that monarchy survives not by controlling symbols, but by respecting what those symbols mean to people. A monarchy is the system where a king or queen represents the nation through duty, ceremony, and inherited responsibility. But ceremony without feeling becomes cold. Responsibility without care becomes dangerous. Charles had seen that truth on William's face, and he could not unsee it. Sophie told Catherine the simplest version of what everyone else was afraid to say. The trusted confidant said the room changed because someone finally refused to pretend pain was protocol. Protocol means the official rules and customs that guide royal behavior. But no rule could erase what Diana meant to her sons or to the public. Catherine listened quietly, and the words settled in her heart. She had not wanted to become the center of the night. She had only wanted the truth to have a place in it. Camilla remained alone, with the cost of her choice. The Queen Consort had lost more than the right to wear one jewel that evening. She had lost the assumption that rank could protect her from emotional consequence. Catherine had not humiliated her for sport, but the wound was still real. William had not attacked her, but his silence had judged her. Charles had not abandoned her, but his decision had revealed where the moral weight of the room truly rested. The tiara was returned to the vault with a new private restriction. The royal jewelry vault, the secure place where historic family jewels are stored, now held more than diamonds and metal. It held a warning. The piece would not be worn again without family agreement, not because the crown feared scandal, but because the family had finally admitted that some objects carry living pain. Diana's memory had been protected not by a speech, but by a boundary. Catherine did not halt the gala to shame Camilla. She halted it to protect Diana's memory, steady William's heart, and remind the monarchy that some legacies are too sacred to be staged. Charles learned that authority has limits. Camilla learned that history does not bend to ambition. William learned that he did not have to carry grief alone. And Catherine became the woman who stood still long enough for the whole crown to understand what it had almost forgotten. The gala ended, the doors closed, and the crown moved forward quieter, humbler, and forever changed by the night Catherine refused to look away. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.